Welcome to today's historical deep dive. You've never seen a toothbrush. You believe demons live in fog. Your town blames goats for the plague. Welcome to the Middle Ages. We strip away the romantic myths and the distant battle lines, and instead, we live inside the ordinary breath, the aching bones, and the quiet resilience of the people who actually inhabited this world. Not the kings or the knights, but the hands that tilled the soil, the eyes that watched the sky, the hearts that beat with hope and fear in a world utterly alien, yet profoundly connected to our own. Imagine, if you can, this stark reality. You wake before the sun, not to an alarm or a gentle nudge, but to the deep ache in your bones and the insistent, tiny scratching of vermin in the thatch overhead. The fire, banked with care last night, is long dead, leaving only a thin layer of gray ash and a memory of warmth. Your breath hangs in the air, a misty ghost against the darkness. The straw you lie on rustles. It's damp against your skin, smelling faintly of stale sweat, smoke, and the earth floor beneath. Outside, the ubiquitous sound of the manor, a coughing sheep from the fold, the distant bark of a dog guarding the lord's stock, maybe a child crying from another hovel, begins to stir. Survival isn't a thought you consciously have. It's the dull, persistent thrumming in your muscles, the empty clench in your belly. It is simply the state of being. You reach a hand out in the gloom, finding first the rough wool of your wife's tunic, then the small, still form of your youngest child huddled close for warmth. They are alive. This is the first victory of the day, unmarked by bells or ceremony, but felt deep in the chest. This raw, immediate confrontation with the elements and the physical body is the bedrock of your existence. Their identity is less about self-expression and more about sheer physical presence and function within the family unit, within the village. You are a body that must endure, that must work, that must feed other bodies. The world is brutally tactile and immediate. The great dramas of kings and distant wars are faint whispers carried by wandering minstrels, often distorted into rumor and myth, compared to the pressing reality of the chill, the hunger, the threat of illness that settles in with the damp and lingers through the bitter seasons. Reflect just for a moment on your own morning. The layers of comfort, the assured meal waiting, the privacy of your space, the absence of gnawing physical threat. How much of our modern identity is built on the absence of these primal struggles? Would you still feel like you if your first thought upon waking was simply survive the cold, find food, avoid the sickness? It makes you wonder what parts of their humanity were forged in this relentless physical crucible. If you love immersive, real storytelling about survival, belief, and forgotten lives, hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you know, guiding the digital algorithms to share these stories with others who are just as curious. Drop a comment with the medieval fact that surprised you most, or what role you think you'd play if you were born in the year 1287. Would you be a farmer? A craftsperson, a monk, a midwife? Let's begin and live the life they never got to finish. Home is a mud box. You wake in darkness. The fire is out. Beside you, your youngest coughs again. The air in the single room is thick with the stale smell of old smoke, damp earth, and the low, steady breathing of the pig nestled by the far wall. Your home is little more than a mud box, walls of wattle and daub, branches woven tight, then smeared with a thick paste of mud, straw, and animal dung. They keep out the worst of the wind, yes, but they hold the damp close, a chill that seems to seep into your very bones. Above you, the roof is thick thatch, layered reeds or straw, a haven for mice that scrabble in the night and spiders that hang heavy webs in the smoky air. In a hard rain, it leaks, cold drops finding their way through, reminding you that even inside, you are never truly separate from the elements. There is a hole high up, directly over the central hearth, meant to let the smoke escape. Some does, twisting gray tendrils upwards into the eternal sky. But much lingers, clinging to the rough walls, coating the few simple possessions, filling your lungs with that familiar dull ache that is just a part of living. Possessions? You own little. A rough-hewn table, perhaps a few three-legged stools gathered around the hearth. Straw pallets or sacks filled with straw for sleeping, laid out wherever there is floor space. Iron pots for cooking directly over the fire. Maybe a single knife, worn smooth with use. A sturdy wooden chest might hold the family's entire stock of cloth, their spare tunics and shifts, patched countless times. Everything you own serves a direct, undeniable purpose. There is no room, no need for anything merely decorative. Beauty exists, but not in objects you possess. Your world is condensed, intimate to the point of suffocation. Privacy is a concept utterly foreign, maybe even nonsensical. Every birth, slick with blood and fear, happens here. Every death rattle, every argument, every moment of quiet intimacy between husband and wife happens within earshot and often view of others, human and animal. The pig grunts, the chickens rustle on their perch, oblivious witnesses to the entire cycle of your family's life. This lack of physical space, this scarcity of personal possessions, it defines a different kind of wealth entirely. Not accumulation, not piling things up, but sufficiency. Having just enough to eat, enough warmth to survive the winter, enough cloth to cover your body. That is riches. And instead of privacy, you have constant, inescapable community. The boundaries that seem so clear in other lives, between human and animal, inside and outside, work and rest, are blurred. Your home is a living, breathing entity, perpetually just managing to hold back the ravenous outside world. Ask yourself, in this world where your entire existence unfolds on a tiny, smoky stage, what would become of your secrets? Of your sense of self when you are never truly alone? We define ourselves by our private spaces, our carefully curated possessions, our personal refuges. They had none of it. They had only each other, the mud walls, the smoke, and the unyielding necessity of simply enduring. Was their resilience forged by this constant, grinding proximity, or was it tested by it every single day? The ache is familiar. Not the sharp, sudden pain of starvation, but the deep, persistent hollow that settles in your gut the moment the last meal is digested, which isn't long. Food is not a matter of choice or pleasure here, under these gray skies and watchful bells, but of sheer sustenance, measured out in handfuls of precious grain and the fearful gamble of the harvest. Your diet is a monotonous litany chanted daily. Dark, rough bread made from rye or barley. Sometimes oats, if the soil is poor. It scrapes your mouth, tastes faintly of the earth it grew from. Gruel is a constant, a warm, thin comfort. Grain boiled simply with water, or whatever scant sour milk the cow offers. Vegetables are the sturdy, pot-grown stalwarts that survive the cold and pests. Tough cabbage, sharp leeks and onions, humble peas and beans. Meat is a rare, almost mythical luxury. Perhaps a small piece of salted pork on a saint's feast day, or the rubbery flesh of a boiled chicken if you are uncommonly lucky. Beef? That belongs to the Lord, a beast far too valuable for the likes of you. Protein often comes from the dried peas stored against the lean months, or, if your hovel is near a bubbling stream, maybe some small bony fish pulled wriggling from the current. Salt is a treasure, a tiny pinch used sparingly to make the bland bearable. Spices are whispers from distant, impossible lands, less real than demons in the fog. Every meal, however meager, is a small victory against the gnawing emptiness in your gut, a temporary reprieve earned through back-breaking labor. You eat what you have, when you have it, gathered around the single pot, sharing equally from the common source. There is no snacking, no casual abundance to reach for. Waste is unthinkable. Every scrap, every crumb, every bone is utilized, boiled down for broth, fed to the few animals, nothing left behind. This perpetual scarcity shapes everything. Your relationship with food is one of reverence and desperation. It is sacred, earned through bone-weary toil in the fields, always vulnerable to the cruel whims of weather, blights, and the unpredictable harvest. The concept of enough is an aspiration whispered in prayers. Plenty is a dream reserved for paradise, painted on church walls you rarely see. Your body is intimately familiar with the subtle ache of insufficient calories, the weakness that comes not just from exertion, but from true hunger. It is a constant companion, a dull warning bell, always tolling just below the surface of your consciousness. Consider our modern obsession with diet, with choice, with food as entertainment or identity. For you, food is purely survival. What does this simple fact tell us about our current anxieties? Are we craving control in areas where our ancestors were utterly powerless, at the mercy of the elements and a handful of seeds? Was this life of constant want a deeper form of living, rooted in stark necessity, or simply a relentless, grinding misery? The sun is up now, painting the smoky air with a weak, watery light. You join the stream of people emerging from the village, tools slung over shoulders, a heavy wooden hoe, a sickle worn smooth by generations of use, a leather strap biting into your shoulder where a worn basket hangs. Your life and the life of your family is dictated by the brutal, unforgiving rhythm of the agricultural year. There is no escape from its turning wheel. Spring is frantic plowing and sowing, pushing your muscles to their limit to get seed into the cold, hard ground before the narrow window closes. Fail, and you might not eat next winter. Summer is back-breaking weeding under a sun that scorches, tending precious crops, praying for rain to nourish, but not so much it drowns everything you've worked for. Autumn is the frantic, exhausting rush of harvest, working from dawn till dusk, hands cut and bleeding, to bring in the precious grain before the weather turns and spoils the year's survival. Winter is a time of biting cold and gnawing hunger, focused on desperate repairs, caring for the precious few animals, and hoping against hope the meager stores last until the first green shoots appear. There are no weekends, no rest days carved out by leisure, only the occasional respite of a church feast day. And even those moments of prayer and brief communal warmth are often tinged with the cold dread of the work left undone, the precious sunlight wasted. Your body is not just yours. It is the primary tool, the engine of survival, and you push it relentlessly. Pain is a constant companion, an aching back that never truly straightens, calloused hands so thick they barely feel, stiff joints that groan with every movement. This direct physical relationship with labor grounds you in the raw reality of production. Your value as a person, your very worth in the eyes of your community and yourself, is directly tied to your ability to work the land, to contribute your output to the collective need and your family's table. There is a deep, visceral understanding of cause and effect. The seed you plant, the harvest you reap, the effort you expend, the survival you earn. Your body is a fragile, irreplaceable machine, and its condition is paramount. An injury isn't just pain. It can be a death sentence, not just for you, but for those who rely on your strength. Your identity is writ not in words on paper, not in possessions beyond the few tools you own, but in the stoop of your shoulders, the strength of your back, and the deep, intricate lines of calluses on your hands. We often seek meaning in abstract work, in careers, in complex goals that stretch years into the future. For the medieval peasant, meaning was brutally, beautifully, perhaps terrifyingly simple. Work to live, work to keep others alive. Was there a lost satisfaction in such immediate, tangible purpose, watching the grain rise from the earth you tilled, knowing you made that possible, or just an endless, soul-crushing misery? Ask yourself, if your worth was measured only by the sweat on your brow and the yield of your field, would you find dignity or despair? The sun hangs high, a relentless eye burning down on the fields that are not yours. Your back aches, a dull, persistent throb as the hoe bites into the earth. This plot, this narrow strip assigned to your family, yields the oats that keep the hunger at bay, the beans that see you through winter. But the best part of your day, often the most fertile hours, is spent here, on the Dimensny, the Lord's land. This is the marrow of your life, the invisible chain that binds you harder than iron. You were born on this manor, your father worked this soil, and your children will inherit nothing but the right to do the same. The Lord of the manor, a man whose face you see perhaps twice a year, owns it all. He owns the woods where you scavenge fallen branches, the stream where you fetch water, the very path you walk. Your right to live here, to scratch a living from a small corner of his world, is the feudal contract. It sounds like protection, a shield against the wolves or rival lords, but often it feels more like a leash. In return for this meager security, you owe him. You owe a portion of your harvest, calculated meticulously by his bailiff, always seeming to take the plumpest grain, the finest wool. You owe boon work, days spent laboring on his fields during the crucial planting and harvest times, while your own crops wait, vulnerable to weather or blight. You owe hens and eggs at appointed times, a piglet perhaps, or the duty to repair his fences, mend the bridge, clear the track to the next village. Your energy, your time, your very sustenance is perpetually siphoned away. This constant extraction keeps you balanced precariously on the edge of survival. It ensures the Lord's granaries are full, his table laden, while your own family often knows the ache of true hunger by spring. The fear is a cold, damp cloth wrapped around your life. The fear of a poor harvest, the fear of the bailiff's displeasure, the fear of being cast out. Where would you go? Every manor has its own lord. Every land is claimed. There is no unclaimed earth for the likes of you. You cannot leave. Not for a fair in the next town. not to visit a dying relative 10 miles away without your lord's permission. Your feet are tied to this ground, your life dictated by the rhythm of his demands and the tolling of the manor bell, calling you to communal work. Your place is fixed, as rigid as the stone walls of the manor house. Resistance is a thought that flickers like a dying ember, quickly extinguished by the knowledge of the stocks, the whipping post, or worse, the removal of the only thing keeping you alive, your scrap of land. It's a strange, heavy paradox. The land defines you, provides for you, yet you do not own it. The fruits of your back-breaking labor are shared unequally, tilting the scales ever in favor of power. How much of the ease we know today is simply the freedom to move, to choose who we work for, to own the patch of earth beneath our feet? What does it truly mean to have your worth, your very existence, bound to the will of another, reliant on a system you cannot challenge, with so little agency over the sweat of your brow? Ask yourself, what would you trade for the right to walk away, to work solely for your own table? Was this binding security, or simply a well-managed cage? The quiet melancholy is knowing that for most there was no choice at all. You were born into the chain. The mist burns off the open fields, revealing the patchwork quilt of unfenced strips, yours among them, snaking across the shared landscape. Your life is lived right here, within sight and sound of the other families. You know the silhouette of every house against the dawn, the specific way each neighbor's chimney smokes. You work your scattered parcels alongside them, bent backs rising and falling in a rhythm dictated by the earth and the shared need to survive. If your plow breaks, you borrow Elias's. If your wife is in labor, it is Martha from 2 cottages down who comes to help, bringing skilled hands and whispered prayers. When the harvest is good, you celebrate together with rough ale and dancing in the muddy square. When the blight takes the crop, you face the gnawing fear as one body. This isn't just proximity, it's an intricate living web. The priest, with his blessings and warnings of damnation. The blacksmith, whose hammer sets the pace of the day and mends what is broken. The miller, who takes his toll of your precious grain. The reeve, the Lord's watchful eye. They are all knotted into your existence. There is mutual support, yes, the instinct to pull together against starvation or sickness. But there is also the sharp sting of envy when a neighbor's pig grows fatter than yours, the simmering rivalry over the best land, the constant, unspoken pressure to fit the mold, to conform to the village's ancient customs and expectations. Your identity isn't a solitary flame. It's a tiny spark held within this constellation, defined by your place, your role, your reputation within this small, interconnected universe. Community isn't a choice made on a Sunday. It is the air you breathe, the bedrock of your survival. It is the safety net woven from shared need, the only social security system you will ever know. It is the source of both the deepest comfort and the most suffocating friction. There is no anonymity here, nowhere to retreat. Every success, every failure, every quiet sorrow or public triumph is known, discussed, judged. The opinions of your neighbors matter more than any king's decree in your daily world. Belonging is not just desired. It is paramount to the very continuation of your bloodline, a matter of life and death. The harsh truth is that individual liberty, as you might conceive it today, is a luxury you cannot afford. Your life is a thread in their tapestry, and if you fray or break, the whole fabric weakens. We navigate digital oceans, connected yet often profoundly adrift. Could the relentless, unavoidable community of the medieval village, this constant visibility and enforced reliance, offer a kind of belonging, a deep-rootedness that we've inadvertently lost? Or would the absolute lack of privacy, the inability to simply be yourself without the unblinking eye of your neighbors upon you, be too high a price to pay for that communal safety? The bells toll again, a deep, resonant sound cutting through the damp air, a sound you've known since before you could walk. It's Sunday. The physical shape of the church dominates your small world, its stone walls rising higher than any other building, a fortress in a vulnerable landscape. But its presence is more than stone. It is the very structure of your understanding. Inside, the air is thick with incense and the scent of damp wool cloaks. You join the others, kneeling on the cold floor. The priest chants in Latin, a language utterly foreign to you, a sequence of sounds that holds power because you know it does, even if you don't grasp the words. This ritual, repeated week after week, year after year, provides the framework. It explains the inexplicable, offering a divine order to the chaos of life, death, and the terrifying unknown. Here, the basics are clear. God reigns supreme, the source of all mercy and wrath. Saints are your intermediaries, closer, more accessible. You pray to Saint Anthony for the fever racking your neighbor, to Saint Isidore for a good harvest, to the Virgin Mary for a safe childbirth. The devil is a tangible enemy, not a concept, but a lurking shadow ready to tempt, to trip you up, perhaps even to send the blight that took half your rye last season. The fear of eternal damnation is a cold knot in your gut, a visceral reality underscored by vivid sermons and stained glass depictions of tormented souls. Yet, balanced precariously against that terror is the profound, desperate hope of salvation, the promise of a paradise that makes the harsh realities of this life, this constant struggle, bearable. It's a cruel irony that your comfort rests on the absolute belief in suffering and punishment. The church isn't just about spiritual belief. It is the clock and calendar of your existence. Feast days, rare bursts of communal joy, a chance for perhaps slightly more food. A break from endless labor mark the turning of the year. Fasting days impose discipline and reinforce the cyclical nature of penance and reward. In a world without newspapers, without reliable roads or distant information, the local priest is often the source of news, guidance, and authority. Faith is a practical tool for survival, a shield against the relentless uncertainty. When famine bites or plague strikes, when death takes a child without warning, faith provides the only available explanation and the only source of solace. It's a moral compass, albeit a stern one, guiding your interactions, dictating right from wrong in a community where reputation and adherence to shared norms are paramount. It provides a framework of meaning when everything else feels random and brutal. In our age of science and data, we have answers for the mechanics of disease, crop failure, and weather patterns that terrified you. We have banished the demons from the fog and explained away the goat blamed for the sickness. But ask yourself, have we simply traded the fear of a visible devil for the quiet, pervasive anxiety of existential meaninglessness? Has the unknown merely shifted from spiritual forces and physical entities to the vast, abstract void of purpose. Your faith, however rigid and fearful, offered a solid, if sometimes terrifying, ground beneath your feet. You knew why you suffered. You knew who to ask for help. You had a concrete path, however narrow, towards hope. Do we, with all our knowledge, have a better framework for understanding suffering, confronting death, and finding meaning than the faith that anchored lives like yours? It arrives like a thief in the night, a sudden, brutal blow. One day you're walking, working, living. The next, a fire burns in your belly, a cough shakes your bones loose, or a limb swells, hot and angry, promising rot. Illness is not a distant threat. It is the shadow that walks beside you always, ready to reach out and pull you under. Medicine as you understand it, precision, diagnosis, sterile tools, simply does not exist. Your body, this fragile vessel, is a mystery, constantly assailed by unseen forces, the bite of bad air from the fens, an imbalance of the humors that govern your being, the touch of a demon, or perhaps just the random cruelty of fate. When the fever takes hold, burning like marsh gas, or the flux grips you, emptying your insides with terrifying speed, you turn to the knowledge passed down through generations. Not books, but whispers. Remedies tried and tested on the bodies of your ancestors. Poultices are mixed, ground herbs, maybe mixed with something less pleasant like dung, believed to draw out the sickness. Potions are brewed from roots and leaves gathered by hand, each plant holding its own secret, its own power whispered by the wise women. Cobwebs might be pressed onto a bleeding wound, their intricate weave somehow fought to staunch the flow, a desperate faith in nature's crude bandage. Your best hope, often, is the village healer. More often than not, she is a woman, steeped in the lore of the hedgerow, wise in the ways of birth and death, and the small remedies that might ease suffering. She knows which leaf to chew for a fevered brow, which bark to steep for a troubled stomach. She comes not with scalpels and strange machines, but with warm hands, a knowing gaze, and a presence that offers comfort as much as the promise of cure. Her knowledge is a blend of practical nursing, keeping the patient warm, giving them water, and the deep empirical wisdom of herbalism. She understands the body through generations of observation, though not through anatomy or science. She might attempt bloodletting, a common practice based on the ancient theory of humors, attempting to rebalance the bodily fluids believed to cause illness. The sharp prick of the lancet, the slow seep of dark blood, a ritual meant to purge the sickness, often leaving the patient weaker, not stronger. It is a grim, hopeful gamble. But mostly, you rely on prayer. You whisper appeals to saints known for healing, Saint Sebastian against the plague, Saint Anthony for the burning sickness. You drag yourself or your loved one to the local shrine, hoping the touch of a holy relic, the blessed air, will turn the tide. Protective amulets, consecrated by the priest or simply worn because your mother wore it before you, hang around necks or wrists, a thin shield against the invisible forces of disease. Death is a frequent visitor here, a reaper whose scythe swings low and often, particularly claiming the very young before they've barely drawn breath, and the old, whose strength has finally failed. You live with a constant, low-grade fear, a knot in your stomach, knowing that a simple cough or a cut finger could spiral into something fatal within days, taking you or someone you love. This constant vulnerability underscores the sheer fragility of your life. Your body is not resilient in the way we might think of it today. It is a battlefield under siege. Knowledge is based on observation. This herb seemed to help old Thomas, and tradition often tangled with superstition. Healing is a patchwork of practical care, handed down herbal wisdom, and unwavering faith. Hope, desperate and fragile, is often the most potent medicine available in this world. Our medical knowledge has radically transformed life expectancy, pushing back the inevitable, conquering plagues and infections that were once certain death sentences. But has it truly removed the fear of illness and death? Or have those primal fears simply been transformed, shifting into anxieties about chronic diseases with complex names, the limits of treatments, the slow decay rather than the swift blow? Is the fundamental human need for comfort, for hope, for a hand to hold in the face of suffering, still as raw and essential now as it was when the village healer mixed her potions in the flickering firelight? The world is a mouth that can swallow you whole before you learn your own name. You know this truth in your bones. Birth is not a joyous expectation, but a battleground fought in sweat and blood and prayers whispered fierce as curses. You sat bedside, damp cloths in hand, watching a woman's breath grow ragged, knowing the midwife's skill and the village charms might not be enough against the ripping, tearing force. You've seen the tiny bundle emerge silent, or cry once weakly and then still. You've carried the small, light weight wrapped in linen to the consecrated ground of the churchyard, the bells tolling their mournful, familiar rhythm, indistinguishable now from the heartbeat of the village itself. If the child fights its way into life, the first few years are a relentless siege. Measles bloom like terrible flowers on delicate skin, the pox, pits, and scars a constant reminder of death's touch. The cough that takes the breath away, leaving a child gasping, blue-lipped. Many simply fade, gone before they've walked 10 paces or spoken a handful of words. 5 winters is a milestone only the hardy reach. You learn not to count too loudly, not to love too carelessly. Is it love, then, if it's held back, braced for the inevitable departure? Perhaps it is a different kind of love, forged in resilience, hardened by loss, less about dreams and more about the desperate present. For those who survive the gauntlet of infancy, childhood is a blink. By the age of 7, sometimes 8, the small hands are needed. No more scrambling, unsupervised near the ditch, or chasing stray hens purely for mischief. You are now part of the human engine that keeps the household turning, that keeps the village alive. You are minding the smaller ones, strapping them onto backs, rocking them into silence while your mother is in the fields or at the loom. You are out in the chill air, shouting at crows to keep them from the precious grain, your voice thin against the wind. You are gathering fallen branches for the hearth fire, your arms scratched, your back aching before sunset. Play exists, yes, but it mimics the labor. Children pretending to plow furrows in the dirt, fashioning dolls from rags, miniature lives mirroring the large, rough one they are about to step into. Toys are few, often carved wood or woven scraps, cherished not for their novelty, but for their simple presence. Education isn't found in books you cannot read anyway. It's in the blistered palm, the quick knot tied, the feel of the earth in your hands. You learn to coax life from the soil, to mend threadbare cloth, to butcher an animal, to build a simple shelter. Literacy is a mystery held by priests and the scribes of the Lord, a world away from your own practical needs. By your early teens, 12, 13, 14, you are no longer a child. You are a young man, a young woman, capable of full labor alongside adults, ready for the responsibilities of marriage and starting your own fragile link in the chain of generations. To reach 14 is, in a very real sense, to have survived the most dangerous part of life's journey. You are, by medieval standards, effectively middle-aged in terms of vulnerability. We today invest years, sometimes decades, in childhood, extending it, protecting it, seeing it as a time of sheltered growth and specialized learning. We cushion it from hardship. How profoundly different would our parenting, our emotional bonds, our very society look if childhood was this brief, perilous passage, and contribution to the brutal necessity of survival was demanded almost from the moment you could walk. It was not a question of potential, but of immediate, required utility. You pull the rough wool over your shoulders, the morning chill biting even indoors. Beside you, your spouse is already stirring, the rustle of straw bedding a familiar sound. There were no grand pronouncements, no swooning promises under moonlight before you came together. There was negotiation. Between your father and theirs, perhaps facilitated by a village elder or even the Lord's bailiff, if your families held enough land or status to warrant it. Dowry was discussed, not jewels or silks, but likely livestock, a few bolts of coarse linen, the promise of help with the harvest for a season. Permissions were sought from the Lord, who owned the land you both worked and relied on your union for his rent and labor, and from the church to bless the practical forging of two lives into one. You married because it was necessary. Necessary for survival. Necessary for the continuation of your family's small plot of land, its meager assets, its line. Your spouse is not just a partner in the quiet intimacy of night. They are your co-worker, your co-manager. The division of labor exists. Yes, perhaps you tend the garden and animals while they work the heavier field tasks, or vice versa. But the goal is singular. Keep the household afloat. Keep the hunger at bay. Keep the roof patched. Your children are born into this enterprise, not as burdens, but as future hands, future laborers. From the moment they can walk, they have chores, fetching water, scaring crows, minding younger siblings. There is no childhood of carefree play as you might imagine it. There is contribution, learning the skills needed to ensure their own survival one day. The family unit is an engine, and every person, from the littlest child shelling peas to the stooped grandmother mending nets by the fire, is a vital cog. Elder family members, if they survive the rigors of age and hard work in a world without cushioned retirement, remain integral. They might no longer swing an axe or plow a furrow, but their knowledge is invaluable. How to treat a fever with herbs found in the woods. How to predict the weather by the clouds. The old ways of planting, of preserving food, of navigating the delicate politics of the village. They become the keepers of history, the caregivers for the very young, the quiet anchors of the household while the able-bodied work from dawn till dusk. Respect for them isn't just a matter of politeness. It's a matter of practical reliance. Their memory holds the blueprint for your family's past successes and failures. It is ironic, perhaps, that in an age seemingly steeped in forward struggle, the wisdom of the past, held in the minds of the oldest, is your most reliable guide. This family, this interconnected web of labor and need, is your only true safety net. There is no state welfare, no insurance, no faraway relative sending aid. If illness strikes, if the harvest fails, if tragedy befalls one member, the entire unit must absorb the shock. Yet you push through the rough door, and a wave of sound washes over you. Laughter, murmuring voices, a snatch of a badly sung ballad. Here, for a few precious hours, the relentless weight lifts. The ale is weak, thin, brewed at home, but it is safer than the ditch water you often drink during the day. It warms the belly, loosens the tongue. Stories spill out, exaggerated tales of encounters with the Lord's men, whispers of neighbors' misdeeds, news from the next village carried by a passing traveler. Gossip, sharp as a splinter, is currency here.